2/3 of the people that come here on small boats last year were found to be valid, legitimate refugees. The other third, if they're not found to have a valid claim, I have no issue with deporting them, and deport them as quickly as you can. I don't think we should give them visas. Let's get more on where this all might end up when it comes to the law. Joseph Kotrie-Monson is a legal commentator and director of Mary Monson Solicitors on Fleet Street. Joseph, good to have you on the programme tonight. Thank you very much for your time. So talk us through, if you would, where the government seems to be going with this. It sounds like it wants to pass a new law here that would make it harder for our courts to stop them sending people to Rwanda. Is that right? And how likely is that to succeed?
Ben, it was a mess from the beginning. It's a mess now. It'll be a mess the further that they double down on this. And in any case, I don't think that they have time to enact all of the treaty changes and legislation. We're not just talking about a single law, where they may say emergency legislation, but if this was an emergency in your house and it took as long as a year or two with all of the arguments they're going to have in the House of Lords going to and fro with this, because it's going to be unacceptable in that house. You can't, it's not an acceptable or realistic, I think is probably the better word, proposal in the context of parliamentary time. Let me say this. There is a basic legal rule that a refugee shouldn't be returned to their country of origin if their lives will be imperiled. Mm-hmm. Rwanda was never capable of providing this, according to the Supreme Court, for two significant reasons. First of all, Rwanda itself has a questionable human rights record, and that was ignored in the High Court ruling, which the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court, Ben, was scathing about. Yeah. But fundamentally, looking at Rwanda as a country's ability to carry this out. And we're hearing today there is going to be a new agreement with Rwanda, different from the old agreement. New boss, same as the old boss, one might think. Well, in fact, the Supreme Court today has said that we need to look at the way that Rwanda's performed in its other obligations. And interestingly, Rwanda had a similar arrangement, Ben, with Israel between 2013 and 2018. And despite the terms of the agreement, and I'm quoting from the judgment, asylum seekers were frequently moved to another country from which they were likely to be refiled. Kind of chillingly, Lord Reid also points out that Rwanda had 100% rate of rejection of asylum claims from countries in known conflict zones: Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan, and UK authorities, interestingly, find that such claims are usually founded. Undoing all of that and doubling down on Rwanda is a kind of legal impossibility. I actually think there's probably, as far as the spring of next year, flights being reinstated or that deadline being met, I think that's utterly fanciful. There's probably more chance of that renegade parliamentary candidate from outer space, Lord Buckethead, taking them to the planet Zog or whatever on whatever spacecraft he chooses.
Might not be a bad thing at this point. Joseph, do you think there's any prospect of flights taking off to Rwanda ever? I mean, is this just something that is going to be kicked down the road?
Well, it's an interesting question, because it's suggested by the government. It's been suggested by lawyers for the government in submissions, and both the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court have said, well, that's interesting. It's been suggested that the situation in Rwanda is improving. Mm-hmm. Who knows? 25 years ago, or in the 1990s, Rwanda was the site in 100 days of a genocide of nearly 1 million people.
But not anytime soon.
Substantial progress. Maybe they'll be making substantial progress at a similar rate. Maybe in 10 or 15 years, this might be possible.
So we're not talking about anytime soon.
It's a legal joke.
Joseph, let me just ask you finally, if I could, about, as a lawyer, your thoughts on the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party calling on the government to just ignore the Supreme Court and get on with this policy anyway.
We're talking about Anderson.
Yes.
Well, he's not a man of great subtlety, is he? He's certainly not a man who'd be listening to a person like me with
he doesn't seem to believe
inconvenient opinions
in the law.
like lawyers.
He doesn't seem to believe in the rule of law.
He doesn't believe in manners, and he doesn't believe in grammar. The last time I heard him speak, he's not somebody I'd be interested in
I'm less
listening
worried
to.
about that than I am about having a senior politician in a governing party who doesn't believe in following the law.
He's not there because of his talent, is he? He's there because he's good at baying with his no-nonsense speaking to the far right of his party, who've had enough with inconvenient people with opinions about things like human rights, things like international obligations, things like experts, things like science, things like economics, all of the types of things that they've been campaigning against since Brexit.
Joseph, good to speak to you. Thank you for your time. That's Joseph Kotrie-Monson, legal commentator, director of Mary Monson Solicitors on Fleet Street.